Hey, everybody, welcome to Love+Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and today is a very special day. We are unveiling a big announcement right here. I'm blessed and honored to have the opportunity to announce the worldwide ERC or WERC. WERC, I gotta be careful.
You gotta be careful.
CEO, Anupam Singhal. Anupam, welcome, congratulations.
Thank you, Ben.
This is huge. I mean, you guys just made this announcement. We're here kind of breaking this in a way, and I get to be the first. Am I the first interview?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm feeling like special, man. This is really cool.
Well, look, it is an honor and a privilege.
How are you feeling right now?
Oh, overwhelmed, exhausted.
You look amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But really energized and pumped for everything that's going to come ahead.
So this is kind of weird, right? Because on so many levels, right? I mean, but exciting. Like, well, first, let me say, I'm really excited.
Okay.
I don't think there could have been a better choice for this role. I'm being serious right now. I love the fact that I think that you are the coolest blend of insider and outsider, right? Because you've been in this industry now for how long now, would you say?
3 to 4 years.
3 to 4 years, but you're not like of this industry. You're not like bred in this industry, right? I mean, you got this private equity background. You've been a founder. You've been an entrepreneur. You've been a CEO. You know, incredible chops and education. I won't read the whole LinkedIn profile bio here, but I mean, incredible experiences globally to bring innovation and insight and new ideas into the industry, but yet still having the context and understanding of the landscape, because there's so many constituencies in our business, and understanding how they all play together is really important. So I just want to, I guess, applaud the board and the search committee for this role, for coming up with Anupam here. In a way, it's kind of an obvious choice and a not obvious choice. I mean, because there was this big process and everything.
Yep.
How did we get here? I got to ask you.
Yeah. So, well, the finer details, you should really ask the search committee chairs, co-chairs, and the board co-chairs. Ashley, chair this year, and Ashley Aldrich and Mark Burchell, who's chair-elect. They were also the co-chairs of the search committee. But we went through a pretty exhaustive process, which was, which I was driving at various points through. 2023, WERC had all sorts of ups and downs. And we've talked about that before. We talked about it before GWS when I was last year, sitting down with you and having a chat. And I talked about it at GWS, where WERC has so much promise, and it has been such an incredible organization, continues to be one, but it obviously went through a very difficult time with COVID, and following COVID, with the industry experiencing a lot of volatility, if you will, and WERC had its own challenges along the way. But last year, obviously I had the privilege to actually sort of be the chair of the board, and as part of that, once Lynn made her decision and informed us and me of her desire to depart WERC, we sort of felt so strongly about the association, all of us, that I stepped in. We decided and we agreed that I stepped in as the interim CEO, and so sort of did all the work that needed to get done. Did
a great job, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And then pulling together the Global Workforce Symposium in the fall. I mean, that's kind of the keystone event, that everybody looks at. I thought y'all pulled that off amazingly well.
Well, thank you.
Great energy there, great engagement, good attendance, really nice.
I couldn't agree more. And really, at the end of the day, for me, why that was because, I said this at GWS, it is for the people, by the people. It is the people that made it amazing. It's the 1,400 plus folks that showed up there, as I touted about it back then, and we have multiple times since. It was record attendance. It was amazing buzz, energy, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of things we can do better, but lots of things we tried and experimented for the first time and so on. But also through all of that, we learned a lot about what it is that we needed. we started the work of transforming WERC from what it has been to what it needs to be to meet the need of the industry in this moment in time and looking ahead, right? And as part of that, the search committee set up to sort of prioritize what it is that we had learned to identify and look for. And we went through an exhaustive process to do that, which I was co-leading in 2023. And at the end of it, coming into 24 was Mark Burchell and Ashley that were co-leading it. And so through that, I suppose again, you'll have to ask for the finer details of the search committee, but what I've been told is they came to a realization that the work of the transformation that had begun and this sort of need to continue to move rapidly down that path and continue to deliver on all the things that we have promised and that we ought to be delivering while doing the work of actually setting up WERC for long-term sustainable growth and success. They felt that, I guess based on the work that went in 2023, the second half of it after Lou's departure, they came to me and asked me if I would be open to it.
What was your first thought when that question was posed to you? Yeah,
I mean, look, this is not something that I ever expected to be doing. And so the first immediate reaction, with no disrespect intended, was to think that they were joking about it and to sort of chuckle a little bit. The immediate next reaction was when they did not reciprocate my chuckle.
When they didn't laugh.
Yeah, when they didn't laugh.
It's like crickets.
Y'all for real. Sort of say, well, no, why would that make any sense? We're running an active process and, we should let that process finish out and see what comes of it. And I'm hopeful for it, which I talked about. Various people at various points in time last year had asked me if I was interested or keen to take on this job. And I had truthfully said to everybody, no, I wasn't. And that was what I continued to believe. And that showed up in that first conversation we had when they reached out to me. But as as I stepped back and they sort of laid out why they were thinking the way they were, and I processed it from everything I learned the last 6 months and 12 months in the 3 years on the board that I spent. This is a unique opportunity where I felt a sense of equal parts responsibility and excitement. Responsibility to continue the work of transforming WERC and to bring it to fruition, to complete that work, which will always be ongoing, some elements of it, but there's quite a bit of wood to chop in 2024 in particular. And excitement for, there's so much change. You know this, there's so much change rolling through our industry.
In our industry, we have to adapt, and we can't, to me, this role right now at this juncture in history is not it's not just being like a steward. It's not just like kind of not crashing the plane. It's like you actually have to be actively steering this thing and navigating these waters that are tumultuous and a bit uncharted, right? And actively responding to and predicting where the industry is going and what types of disruptive forces are here, because there's existential issues in our industry that have been brewing now for a few years and are kind of coming to a head right now. And you don't need somebody who's kind of like learning the landscape and the existential issues on the job. You need someone who's kind of aware of them, has a strategy and a direction on how to handle these things.
Listen, I couldn't have said it better in terms of the need of the hour is to work through a lot of the changes and challenges that are rolling through, and thereby the sort of the excitement in the opportunity beyond the responsibility is the need is not just to figure out what a transformed WERC looks like, but it is to actually work with the entire industry to figure out what the future of talent mobility looks like. Global talent mobility, exactly to your point, as you're talking about it. There is the buyer-broker commission issue in the U.S.
Huge.
The lawsuits that are rolling through that will likely have, we already know this. There was a panel at GWS with some of the leading RMC leaders on there, and they made no they had no doubts about it. They said it very plainly that the revenue model for RMCs is going to have to change.
The most profitable service that RMCs offer is a home sale as a home sale
right?
service, right? So if that's undermined, the profitability and revenue, and that's undermined.
And that's not a thing that only impacts the RMCs. That impacts the entire value chain. It impacts the customer, which is the corporate. It has a pretty significant impact. And that's one issue.
That's just one issue.
You've then got technology and the disruption that's already starting to cause and will cause more of. It's only accelerating. And so what does that mean for the world at large and the workforce at large, but in our industry in particular? And you kind of roll that out. There's like 3 or 4 major forces at play where everyone needs to work together to figure out what the future needs to look like and have alignment around it, right? And what is WRC's role? WRC's role is to be that mechanism, to be that means to drive to that sustainable, attractive future. So that is sort of the second part of when you asked me what was your reaction when I thought about it after the initial conversation was, hey, one, I do feel the sense of responsibility to try and bring these things to a closure. And then the second part of it is there's so much change. And that's what I thrive on, right? As an investor in my background, then to leave that and risk being a broke entrepreneur to start a technology company solving a real problem that I experienced, and then to do that at scale, and then stepping onto the WERC board and so on, like all those things. It's always about, if I see a problem that I feel like I can help find an answer to, then unfortunately even I'm not able to help myself. Keep myself from it.
Isn't that the curse of the entrepreneur? It's like we're just so attracted to broken things, It's like the
I
nature.
wouldn't call it broken.
No, I'm not saying ERC's broken. I'm not saying our industry's broken, but I mean that's what we do. We break things on purpose to rebuild them in better ways.
Right.
And so when we see a problem, we can't stop ourselves from fixing it.
Yes.
Maybe broken, whatever.
So
we can't help ourselves.
Yeah, what you're exactly right about in that is that yes, WERC and this industry is going to have to take a hard look at what has been and be okay with breaking some of those things, because some of those things are being broken for us no matter what.
Yeah.
And so be willing to look at it and then work together to say, okay, all right, here's what the new future looks like.
And it's so interesting because we're talking about the broker commissions, right? But I mean, every single vertical is having similar issues, right? You could argue that DSPs are having issues with AB5 and contractor relationships, right? And work status, employment statuses. You could argue that the moving industry has been disrupted ever since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 and removing the moving expense deduction, right, for tax purposes, and how that's really hurtled us into this lump sum environment, right, by removing the tax benefit of managed relocation. Immigration, right? I mean, the modernization efforts in every country that are going on simultaneously, and it's just so much change right now. And the crazy thing is too, when I look at associations, I remember several, right? When I look at associations, they usually have one set of problems they're trying to fix, right? The uniqueness about the global mobility industry is it's actually there's subset industries within it. And you have all these industries that you have to be proficient in. Global mobility.
This was one of the most fascinating realizations that I came to, because I did not grow up in this industry, was that this industry sits at the confluence of, at the intersection of probably 10 to 15 other major industries, right? Where all of those service lines across those different industries have to come together in a coordinated fashion to deliver talent mobility, which is an essential part of overall talent strategy, right? Like, that is really important stuff. And you can't mess around with it because it directly impacts an individual who is meant to be cared for, whether from a duty of care perspective, whether from an operating efficiency perspective or a retention perspective. It needs to be cared for and be made successful as quickly as possible. Now, one of the things, and you listed a lot of the changes across each of the verticals within our industry, but one of the more fundamental things that has been playing out, and I know this from the company that I founded, Mineo, and where that sat in relation to the global mobility industry, with it being a business travel compliance solution, was this rapidly evolving definition of and nature of mobility itself, where historically it's been about relo. Then it evolved to include assignment, long-term assignments, then short-term assignments, and then business travel, which was off on the side,
right?
But then started to sort of
become part of our purview a little bit, our
hit
scope.
heads, like butt heads together a little bit, and mobility didn't want to have anything to do with it, but it sort of started to be forced together. And then you have remote work happening, and now you have companies taking a different approach to how they move people and whether they move people and what that looks like and so on. And mobility is not inexpensive; it's expensive.
Yeah.
So there's a drive to increased ROI and profitability in this high interest rate environment. So there's so much fundamental change that's going on, as well as these sort of what may be hopefully temporal changes that are rolling through that need to all be accounted for and sort of taken together. Important to figure out, okay, how do we make it from here to there, not just in a, as exactly as you said, in a keep the lights running kind of way, but how do we get from here to there in a growth oriented
right flourish,
so, one of the fundamental beliefs I have, and I was fortunate enough, or whatever you want to call it, but I started my working career before the dot-com crash, and the thing that I've seen now, having lived through 2 crashes, is some of the best, longest lasting companies and industries emerge in the worst of times.
Yes.
And you can look back at history repeatedly, and that has happened in every crisis. The best, longest lasting, most sustained companies and industries have emerged. And that's sort of the approach that I take to this when I look at this industry. And I know a lot of leaders across the board over the last couple of days, been making a lot of phone calls to a lot of the leaders in the industry, and they're all ready to roll up their sleeves and jump in and say, okay, how do we do this? And there was no better evidence of that, as I said, at that RMC leader panel that we did at GWS on I think it was a Wednesday morning. I will never forget that panel where they all came out and were like, yep, 75% of our revenues in some RMC's cases are going away because of this buyer broker commission issue. And we're going to have to retool and figure out how this all gets done, even in the face of those challenges.
Yeah, it's really great stuff. And I want to talk a little bit in depth about the challenges and how you prioritize those things. I also want to let people know we're going to be in the comments here. So we have the unique opportunity to be kind of commenting with you and workshopping some of this stuff. So if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, we are going to actually be responding live as this goes out to you. So get in there. Want to know who you are, where you are, what you're thinking right now. What are some of the things that are worrying you, or some of the things that are exciting you about the future of the relocation and global mobility industry? So kind of get your voice out there, hit that like button as well. Appreciate you very much. I want to ask you, Anupam, what is job number 1? What's the first thing you're going to tackle now in this new role?
Yeah, so it's actually sort of laying out a strategic vision for WERC with everything we've been talking about. And one of the most important pieces to doing that is to actually listen. I believe it is exceedingly important to listen and listen critically to the industry. And I said this again, I'll keep repeating it because this is what I fundamentally believe. It is about, it's for the people, by the people. And if you truly believe that, then you have to listen to people. And you have to listen to what their needs are, what their concerns are, what they feel like could be opportunities for the future. And such, and that really should inform how we build out the strategic plan for, while continuing to execute what the board laid out last year, the 3-year plan. But how do we prioritize within that, and maybe even evolve that strategic plan and the vision for what WERC ought to be doing and where it needs to be focusing on and delivering. Because, without that, it's sort of a waste of time.
Yeah, and I think it's really smart. I think that there's so much talent at all of these companies that are a part of WERC. There's so many, I mean, they live with these problems day in, day out, right? And we're all trying to figure out the same problems. And I think sometimes when I look at the way associations are run, sometimes, I mean, people think that they have to come up with all the answers themselves within the board, but there's so many answers out there within the constituency if you just reach out and ask. And I think the other thing too about it is I think we can't underestimate the power of relationships. This business is highly relational. I think a lot of people say that in every business, right? I mean, but the business of association, I mean, we're literally by definition people associating with one another, right? And so I think just the power of reaching out and forming those bridges to one another and letting folks know that they can have a voice and they can call and they can say, hey, I see this is happening. And one thing I have to give you a lot of credit for, and I promise Anupam's not paying me to say this. No, but I have to give you credit for is I feel probably, and I'm just going to speak for myself personally, I probably feel more included and heard and seen and valued than I've ever felt by WERC.
Wow.
I've always felt like I had a lot to bring to the party and a lot to bring to the table and a lot of good ideas. And I was always the first to raise my hand and volunteer and, whatever. But I didn't always feel like that contribution was, wanted or appreciated or whatever, And this is pretty recently because you've just been doing the interim CEO thing for not too long, last 6 months or whatever. But I felt like in the last 6 months, I mean, we had lunch. We had a really candid conversation. We were super honest with one another. I valued that tremendously. I did. Yeah. I probably wouldn't have attended GWS without that conversation. I was really on the fence legitimately. And you asked me to kind of trust the process. And I did. And I was blown away, might be a hair strong, but I was super pleasantly surprised by the quality of the program, the attendance, the people that were there, the new faces that were there. Thought it was great. Really thought it was great. Excellent. I wouldn't just say that if I didn't. And now I'm like, hey man, I'm all in, and I think it's really, really wonderful. And furthermore, I mean, letting, you being here today right now and talking to people, that's not easy to put yourself out there. I mean, because there's a lot of scrutiny that comes with this job.
Yeah,
I'm sure you feel that way.
Yep.
I mean, there's thousands of eyeballs out there just looking. What's he gonna do next? What's he gonna say? Oh, I take exception with that. That he ended the sentence with a prepositionary phrase. Right. You know what I mean? It's like the kind of the level of scrutiny you must be under, right?
Yeah.
So I give you and the board, right? Because it's a team effort. I give you guys all a lot of credit, and I appreciate the opportunity as a member. To kind of be a part of the fabric, and bring, I guess, my authentic self to the party, and not necessarily have to conform to these are the sets of opportunities we have. Instead, say, okay, what skill sets do you have, and how can we leverage those?
Yeah,
that's my rant.
No, look. First of all, thank you for sharing that sentiment. It is deeply important. It was extremely important in all the work that went on last year that we go back to basics of for the people by the people, which means that. It is not about WERC. It is not about the staff at WERC. It's not about the CEO at WERC or the board at WERC. It is about the people. And that is really what matters. I drill that into the team every single day over the last 6 months and already in the last several days. That is the one thing that you should always be thinking about in everything that we do, all the work of this association. So with that in mind, one thing, well, I'm disappointed that you were not blown away by GWS last year.
I was borderline blown away.
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine. Look,
I've seen a lot.
I want you to be honest, and that's good. Well, then hang on to your hat because we'll blow you away this year.
Well, that's the thing. I had 6 months really kind of going into it to really do something in massively different ways. No, I do. I think it's just going to continue to build.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was your first GWS putting it together.
Yes.
You had half a year maybe going into it.
Yeah, we had a new team.
3 months.
We had a new operating model. We had a CEO that had departed, not 4 or 5 months
June,
prior to GWS.
Middle of summer.
We stepped in, and there was again lots of bumps, lots of things that we know that we can and should do better next time around. But all in all, we gave it our best shot, and we put the right sort of perspective in place. And I was incredibly pleased to see the sort of the energy coming out of it, and the sort of the buzz that continued for days and weeks after, of like people feeling like, yeah, this was a really good thing, because that's really why we worked our backsides off. As just stewards of the organization, as board members, and me as chair last year. And so that is actually a fundamental driver of how we're going to be approaching things going forward. Is it has to be about making sure people feel included. Now, there'll always be people that'll we're not, I think I'd be foolish to think that we can please 100%.
You can never please 100%
of anybody.
Nor should you try, because honestly, it wouldn't be a good product if you did please 100%.
Right, but I do think it is important to aspire to make sure that at least everyone is heard.
That is the key.
Right.
Everyone can feel heard. You can all bring the opinions. You know that they're being considered. Right. We're going to go this direction, but I want everybody to know we've taken everything under advisement.
Yes. And so the part of that is important, that I don't believe we've done an effective job of. And I'll be the first one to say, even over the last 6 months with me in that role, we didn't do a very effective job of, is to communicate back out. What is it that we're doing and why we decided to do that, right? So communicating that back out. And that was part of the honest lunch conversation that you and I had, where the first thing I said was, listen, one of the things I'm realizing is that we're doing so much incredible work, but we're just not getting it out enough. And so we've been really, beating ourselves up on what are all the different ways we need to be actively meeting people where they are, so we can be sure that they heard us and that we heard them and that they understand that this is what is happening. Here's the benefit to you of it, and here's why we're going down this path, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone will agree with everything again, right? 100% of people will fundamentally not agree. That just cannot be.
Yeah.
But it is very important to get those different pieces of input and different voices to come together. And the board is a mechanism to help with that. But it's not the end-all be-all, as you said. We are redoing, and I talked about this last year, we're redoing our entire committee structure and infrastructure, where that is going to be an important part of.
Talk more about how that works. You're redoing all the committees, and I'm also really valuing the transparency, the level of transparency. I think one of the things, the feedback I'd gotten over the years is, we see decisions being made, but we don't know how they got there.
Right.
They felt like they were being made behind closed doors, or kind of in a vacuum, and people just didn't know how to get through and be in the room where it happens, and to have their voice heard, and then to understand the thought process of what the outcome was.
Right.
And obviously that's hard to do, but I think you recognize that issue. So talk to me a little bit about the committees things and some of the structural changes you're doing.
Sure. And I couldn't agree with you more. Transparency is super, super important. So, committees, so there's a lot to it, actually. We could spend easily a half hour talking about it. But I think that if I were to hit the highlights are, one, it was not completely clear to even the people on the committees, what were the committees trying to achieve? What was the end goal? What was the intent for it? And the intent may have been clear to people at some points in time, but tangible progress, I don't think was getting made in quite the way that it should be. And that's not okay, because you're leaning on people and asking them to give you their time, which is valuable, and their expertise, which is incredibly valuable. And to not make something of it is not okay, right? And so that was an important part of it. So what is the thing that we did going into this year, which the new committees will launch starting April 1, so they run April 1 to March 31. Every committee will have a charter.
Okay.
That gets reviewed by that committee and signed by the leadership of that committee, and actually gets memorialized, and they operate against that charter. They report directly into the board. So all the work that's coming out at every board meeting, they're going to be talking about it, which means that there is clear roadmap for what needs to get done. 1, 2, the outputs coming out of it, or whatever the learnings might be, which is essentially bringing the voice of the industry together through the committees to the
Right.
board to factor into the execution plan, is going to happen directly.
Are there
Right.
board members on each committee?
There,
Because I felt like that was a disconnect before.
there are
Just 'cause
absolutely.
I was on the YP committee
Yes.
twice, 2 different times.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a board member on our committee,
Yeah.
nor was our staff liaison a board member. So we
Right.
did all these things in a bubble, and we'd hear from staff like, "Well, I'll see
Take
what I
this
can
back.
get approved. I'll take
Yes.
it back," and then and they were not successful inevitably, and yada yada.
So two things. One, yes, board representation on committees, but two, more importantly, the leadership. So every committee will have a chair and a vice chair.
Hmm.
That will be democratically elected from within that committee.
Okay.
So transparency. That's not, the board is not going to tap on people's shoulders and say, "Oh, why don't you be chair and vice chair of this committee?"
Yeah, 'cause you're right.
It is going to be the committee
Right.
that comes together that will determine who the chair and vice chair needs to be. That
Love it.
leadership of that committee will directly report into the board, meaning at board meetings, they will be talking about
Oh.
what is it that is needed and not needed. So there's no in-between people.
So there's
Take
no
that out.
disconnect, and then you also
Correct.
so what I'm hearing, you kind of eliminate any possibility for cronyism.
Correct.
You add transparency and democracy to the process,
Correct.
and then there's no disconnect between what happens at the committee and the board. It's a straight line in,
Correct.
and they're reporting it.
And
Love it.
I'll give you another example of that in
That's
terms
what's
of this
fun.
transparency. It's not only going to happen in this committee structure, but even on the board. So in the past, the executive committee of the board may have been assembled by, and I'm not saying, I'm not going to go too far back, but in my experience anyways, in the time that I was on there, at times it was sort of you getting tapped on your shoulder and being asked to sort of
Right.
be on the executive committee. The way we ran it this year was no, actually everyone on the board has the ability to self-nominate. They nominate, and then their peers on the board, the whole board, votes on every nomination. And so the board determined who they wanted to have on the executive committee for specific roles.
That's
Vice chair of
smart. I like
finance,
it.
vice chair of corporate membership, vice chair of supplier membership. Right?
Yeah, I like that because also in these roles, like you got to carry some bags in these roles too.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
and so to just put people on there because of maybe a name or a popularity or whatever, if they're not willing to really carry their bag and do work, right? Because sometimes that's the problem with folks that get on these boards is they have so much work in their day job, they may not have time to do the work of the board, but the board needs the work, right?
Right.
But how do we get? And one of the pieces of criticism I've heard in the past is the selection of board members in general.
Mhm.
How can we ensure that this is transparent and that people feel included and that they have a real shot to make it? Because there's been some confusion I've sensed there.
Yeah,
Frustration.
it is. I've definitely sensed it and
Seen it,
and
heard it. Felt rocks thrown from the crowd. Yeah.
Yes. So it is an area that we need to spend some time on. I don't have an answer for it just yet, but rest assured that we are actively looking at it and we'll be working through ways to make it more sort of transparent is one way to put it. What I can tell you is the expectation is, and whether this plays out in this way this year or it has to be a couple of years before it plays out that way, is this committees that I just described to you,
Mm-hmm.
right, comprised of volunteers who then nominate amongst them the leaders who rotate on a annual or biannual basis, and they are directly spending time on the board with the board, right, reporting into it at board meetings, etc. That I expect will become the mechanism for folks to end up on the board. So if you get on a committee, you do the hard work, the hard yards, and you volunteer for leadership and your peers select you to be leaders of those committees, and you're actually being effective in the work of that committee and funneling that into the work of WERC, well then you've clearly demonstrated leadership, and that's how you should end up there, as opposed to some sort of an opaque process that's not clear to people. How do I actually set myself up for candidacy for the board? So
I like that.
That should make it clear. Now, I'm not saying 100% of the board will comprise of that mechanism, but that will be a very important, or the intent is and the expectation is that will in the next year, a couple of years, become a very important way in how people end up on the board.
I like that. I like that because you've demonstrated a willingness, and an ability to perform at a lower level, but at a committee level.
Yeah.
Um,
and you start to understand the work of
and you
board.
understand the work of being on a board or a committee, and
Yep.
so you're not just thrust into it, because that's another thing, right? You might raise your hand and say, I want to be on the board,
Right.
and you get on the board, oh crap, this is a lot of work. This is not what I expected. This is, I don't understand the bylaws and the way these things, the points of order and such.
So if you actually ask board members from last year in particular, 2023 new board members joining, they'll tell you that their orientation, they didn't have enough of an orientation. The first board meeting they showed up, I was like, wait, I don't know if I understand this, so I don't know if I can contribute. And that's a miss, right? Again, it's a miss. And so if you've worked your way through that committee structure and the leadership and the committee structure and already spent time on the board reporting into it through the committee structure, you already start to know the work of the association in that realm, and you start to then understand it across the different realms.
Right, because you now are presenting into the board from your committee. So you're getting exposure at the board level, and you're seeing the way these things work. You're being in the room.
Correct.
You're in the room.
So your ramp is also minimized. So there's a lot of these kinds of what I think of as simple things. Some of them just take time, just longitudinal sort of lapse of time that needs to happen. But some of these things that should be in place will go into place. Now, with pure democratic processes, they can sometimes be inefficient. But that's where the trick will be, to make sure that it does not become debilitatingly inefficient, while ensuring that exactly what I'm talking about and what we're aspiring to, which is to have this radical transparency and visibility, and sort of, equality is a very charged term, but really sort of equal access, if you will, and the ability to understand, okay, how do I get from here to there? And if those paths are clear, then you can do,
it's very motivating too. If the path's clear, it's very motivating. When the path's not clear, it's demotivating. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it's really fascinating. I think it answers a lot of questions that people probably have that, frankly, they haven't had the opportunity to ask. And I hope people are getting in the comments right now and really participating there. And that's another thing that I'm really excited about, that you're making this possible for us to allow people to comment.
Absolutely.
Right now,
Yeah, absolutely.
That's neat. I mean, that's a big thing. A lot of people don't like to have commentary. It's like, we're just going to do a webinar and push it out there. It is what it is. Take it or leave it.
Listen, I guarantee you there are people that are upset right now about the direction we're taking, what we did last year, where we're going this year. My appointment as the new CEO. I'm sure somebody is going to have a good reason.
It could be way worse.
Well, thank you.
I just didn't want to see somebody from outside the industry that had no contact.
Well, that's a low bar. Come on.
Well, no, it's not, though. It could have easily happened. I've seen it happen to other associations where they just get the cruise ship association president to step in, and you're like, what?
You don't like cruise ships?
I love cruise ships, but come on, like the COVID track record, it's just bad.
Yeah.
No, my point is, though, it's just, I like a buffet, but I'm just saying it's not the right direction, okay? It's not the right direction.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I'm happy to see you in this role. I think it's really great. It's nice to see a familiar face who gets it, who's smart, who's can weigh all the different sides, and that's gonna be that's the hard part, right? Because I gotta think, when you form an agenda going forward, and we're gonna talk about some of the cool conferences and stuff going on, which you're most excited about. But it's gotta be hard when you form an agenda going forward, and you weigh all the different constituencies and everyone's sub-agenda, right? I mean, gosh, you got people that are pro-renter and people that are pro-home buyer, and you got people that are pro-permanent, assignment, and people that are pro, temporary. I mean, you got the business travel. You got people that are kind of, it's you gotta, and then you kind of gotta pick one and say, this is what we feel is. I mean, how do you pick one and feel like this is what's best for the association?
So my rule has always been in these things, it's not about picking one or the other. If there are needs, legitimate needs, they all go onto the board. The question is prioritization. What comes first, second, third, fourth? That's a function of the urgency, the importance of that need, but also the ability for the organization to execute against that need. Whether it's an association, whether it's a business, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you have to understand those things, right? You have to understand as much about the outside forces as the inside forces. If I don't have that capability on my team, taking that on and trying to execute it is a recipe for disaster and a failure, right? So you've got to be very clear about what are your own strengths and what are your development areas, and align yourself with the things that you know you can deliver on with great confidence really well, while you invest in shoring up your development areas.
Okay.
Right? That's true for individuals, I believe. That's how I try to live my professional life. And it's very true for any organization, again, any business or nonprofit.
I agree with the whole like kind of play to your strengths thing. I think sometimes we overemphasize shoring up our deficiencies or development areas, and we don't play into our strengths enough. What do you think the strengths of WERC are? If you were to pick like 3 things exceptionally strong that they're going to be leaned into.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there are, as I think about it, there's probably 5 key pillars. And I'm sure there's a lot more for me to learn. As I said, there's listening that I want to do with folks throughout the industry. So this will evolve, I hope. But as I see it, as I've learned it over the last 6 months in particular, and over the last couple of years in the industry, there's education, right? That brings with it certification and so on.
Certificate.
Right?
Yeah, the CRP and the GMS are widely recognized and valued.
But not alone, not that the certifications alone, just education in general. Like, so we did the AI workshops and labs at GWS, that being an example, right? It is here, present. Okay, we can talk about it in a panel style, or we can actually get people to roll up their sleeves and actually work through it and take the fear out of, how do I even begin? So education is very key, and I think WRC is not only really good at it, but has even more opportunity ahead for it. Number 2 is affinity and community. Okay, so 2 and 3 will go together, and I'll tell you what it normally gets perceived as. But community and affinity, where everyone wants to have a community. In this community, in this industry, I've seen it more than probably anywhere else in my career in the past, where people really enjoy spending time with each other.
Oh, we're nuts. We love it.
They bounce off of each other's energy and then learn from each other.
Yeah.
And there's so much sort of cross-pollination within the industry that happens in terms of the professional sort of opportunities that open up and so on. So there's the community and affinity piece of it. And the third one is business development, right? And so 2 and 3 go together in the form of networking.
Yeah.
But really, it's community affinity and then business development, which events like GWS and regional summits are forums for. And then you've got research to help shine a light on what is working, what's not working, and where the data needed for the industry to sort of figure out how we can go from here.
Research is interesting.
And then advocacy.
I'm going to ask you about advocacy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, each one of these things we can have long conversations.
No, I know. And we're going to keep this short.
Yeah.
Because I think advocacy is unfair.
Okay.
I'm going to go, you know what, this is, I know I'm supposed to be asking you questions, but I don't care. It's my show, whatever. No, but I think one of the criticisms I hear that I think is unfair.
Okay.
Is that WERC doesn't do enough from an advocacy standpoint. And I think that is a fault. There's a faulty premise baked in there that the WERC is big enough, has enough of a concentrated interest in a certain area without conflict, because people feel differently sometimes.
Right.
That they're even big enough to have a voice on Capitol Hill or influence legislation. I mean, it's not the, it's not the National Association of Realtors. It's not the American Trucking Association. It's not the NRA. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like really, I don't think that's a fair criticism. So
I generally, I say at some level I would agree with you, but there is an opportunity there. There's a lot of good work that's gone on from an advocacy perspective, both independently at WRC as well as in collaboration with other industry associations and such. And part of the problem there has been we've just not done a good job of actually communicating it out and making it known to people that all that work happened. The people that benefited from it, they know that it did, but the industry at large does not realize that, because again, I'll take it on us that I think WRC has not done a good enough job, and it goes back to my point earlier about investing more in communications and meeting people where they are. And then the other thing is, this is an election year in the United States and the UK and in India.
Yeah,
right.
Big time.
I think someone quoted this stat to me. I didn't verify it independently, but 60% of the world's population will be going through an election this year. So and we know that it's an electorally charged environment, and immigration is a hot a hot button issue, but there's a number of other issues, taxes and so on and so forth, that impacts every one of us, not only our businesses, but every individual. And so there are things that, because we sit at the confluence of different industries, that we ought to be thinking about and looking at potentially in collaboration with other industries, really pushing on the hill.
And I think that's,
by the way,
yeah,
I'm going to say this is crazy, and I didn't realize this until after I accepted the position. This year, GWS, 60th anniversary for WERC. GWS will be in DC, and it'll be a month before the US elections.
Yeah.
So it is an absolutely insane year. You cannot miss it if you care about what is going on and what's going to happen. You can't miss it. Of course, the logistical nightmares that's going to create for us.
Well, you've already got the room block. You already got the hotel, right?
Yes.
Yeah, as long as you got the hotel, I mean, you're ahead of the game. All right, let's hop into that, because we could spend a long time on advocacy, and I've got some really excellent thoughts that you should listen to. But
love to hear it.
Yeah, but let's get into what everybody wants to know
Excellent thoughts,
about.
as you say.
I'm not going to tell them to you, but they're excellent. Trust me.
They're excellent.
They sound great in here.
You might
I don't know.
say so yourself.
Yeah. No, trust me. But no, let's get into conferences.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the pillars that I think maybe you're selling yourself short a little bit on, or could be in the top 5 pillars.
Oh.
But the conference, I think y'all do a really good job. I mean, I think that GWS is the conference of the year in the global mobility and relocation industry. I really do believe. I think it's the cornerstone. It's probably the most important one that spans. Obviously you can go deep into moving, and I love the people at IAM or CHPA or whatever. You can go deep, right? Yeah. But as far as I mean, it's by far, in my opinion, the watering hole, the place to be. So you mentioned it's in DC here. First, let's give us an overview of all of the events and conferences that are on the docket this year.
Yeah. So our first regional summit in India in many, many years is happening on May 8th, I believe.
Wow.
That'll be in Bengaluru, which is sort of the tech capital in India, but a very active business environment in India generally. The second one is the regional summit in APAC back in Singapore. A week later.
Week later.
Yes.
So is the idea people go over there and they kind of hang out in the region if they're from out of the region?
Yeah, sort of, right?
Okay.
So you can do your business meetings. If you're traveling from North America, for example, you can make it a 1-week trip and hit up all of Asia in that, meet with teams, your clients, etc. that you want to, right? So, or just learn about it. I encourage people to actually go out. I for the first time, I went out to the Singapore APAC conference last year, obviously in my role. And I was blown away by, we read a lot of these things in the press about the incredible growth that's going on there and so on.
Right.
But actually being there and experiencing it is a whole other thing.
Right.
And so while we've talked about challenges facing our industry, for example, here from our vantage point, there's so much opportunity around the world. And we just need to widen our perspective.
For sure.
Right? On that.
We're totally guilty of that here in the US.
So that's the second one. We have not finalized and announced the plans for a LATAM regional summit, but stay tuned for that. And then, of course, there's GWS coming in Washington, D.C. National Harbor this year at the Gaylord.
Fantastic venue. That's the venue.
Right. So we're excited.
Way better than the Marriott Hardman that we used to do it at back in the day.
Yeah, that's right.
Already leaving, upgrading the situation.
That's right, significantly. So all those are in play, and then there's obviously roundtables that'll be happening throughout the year, regional events. Already on the docket for going out to a few of the regional events and having WRC representation there. You were talking about collaboration and building bridges, and I mean, we've got to do a lot of work on that with all of our regional associations and adjacent organizations in other industries. So there'll be a lot more that'll be coming in all of those fronts. You said events, selling it short, not making it one of the 5 pillars. I couldn't agree with you more that WRC has some of the best events there are. They can be even better, I know it, but they're some of the best events there are. I actually view that as infrastructure. It's not one of the 5 pillars because it is the mechanism, it's the medium to deliver education, to deliver community
It's like a
affinity.
tactic for the strategy.
It's to deliver business development opportunities. It's where value gets created. And of course, it is valuable in and of itself, but it is where that value is getting created. And so it's the pillars, it's the work that we do that comes together and gets delivered in that sort of space. So some of these things, when you ask me what's the first order of business, it's the strategic plan. Part of it is just simplifying what is it that WRC does and how does it do it, i.e. what is the value that it's creating and how is it creating it and how does it deliver it. So it's sort of just simplifying these kinds of things down for the team to understand, and then we'll communicate it to the industry so the industry understands what is it that WRC does and where, if I wanted to contribute or participate or ask for something, where does that fit in? Like,
I want to ask everybody out there who's watching this right now to get in the comments and let us know, what are your thoughts about events and conferences? What would you like to see more of? What do you think, is great? Let's do more. Or maybe something that could be tweaked, I mean,
absolutely.
And this is the fun part in your job. And by fun, I mean terrible part. Is that you got to hear all this critique and and all these opinions and everybody's got one, and now you got to make sense of it all. Can we do it? Can we not do it? Is it too pie in the sky, or can we get there in 3 years? Is it a build kind of a thing? But have you gotten any crazy requests that you're like, oh gosh, here we go?
I mean, the champagne wall.
The champagne wall. But y'all did the champagne wall. There was a wall last year. For those of you who don't know, if you didn't somehow find your way to GWS last year, there was it was like a grass, like kind of a grass wall that's like super Instagrammable. Which, by the way, first time I've seen like Instagrammable at GWS, and you go up to it and you ring a bell, says ring bell, and a disembodied arm reaches out with some champagne. It was cool.
Mechanical Turked it. So that was part of a broader request, which was mermaids and champagne.
So we did 86 the mermaids.
We were like, CPA is not going to be okay with us bringing live mermaids to GWS.
The insurance on that's got to be through the roof, the live mermaids.
We let the mermaids be where they are and just sort of left that out. But
mermaids, you said mermaids. Hey, you know what? You shoot for the stars, you land on the moon, right? It's great. You still got champagne coming out of a wall.
Beyonce, Snoop Dogg.
Dude, you get a lot of crazy entertainment requests like, we need to have Beyonce.
I mean, look, there's a lot of opinions, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Are we announcing Beyonce is going to be?
No, I did not say that.
Okay. Can we?
No, don't even start. Nope. Do not even start.
Can we get an AI? Can we get an AI Anupam in here that says Beyonce's going to be?
That's right. We can't even afford the hologram of Beyonce, so I don't even start.
I mean, I think a hologram might be in the budget. Yeah. Would ticket prices have to double, triple, quadruple in order to have a Beyonce?
All right.
He's like, don't even want to talk about Beyonce. Are we in violation of a trademark right now?
I don't know.
Okay, fine. So entertainment's pretty much going to stay as is.
No.
We might get a mermaid.
No, I didn't say that. We'll see.
How important?
Last year we did something different. We had that dance group, the kids.
That was nice and affordable.
Well, and actually they're pretty, they're nationally acclaimed, that group.
All right.
And it was a good cause. And that was a couple of those things, the water filter things as well.
I like that. And then that was fun too, because I don't know, we built the water filtration. I hope
this is Wine to Water. So Wine to Water, the association that builds and distributes around the world water filters to provide clean drinking, safe water to kids and families, and has saved countless, millions of lives. All of us got together in the room on the opening day. Tuesday.
Enormous ballroom.
Yeah, and we all assembled those filters that were sponsored by WRC, and those got shipped around the world. So your work, handy work, is directly benefiting for at least 10 years some families.
It was fun too, because it was kind of like we're all doing them at our table. We have our little kit. We're putting it together. We're all going through okay, am I doing this right? What does yours look like? So it was like a team building aspect to it. And then at the end of this 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, we produced this thing, which we felt really good about.
Yeah.
We were also a little scared. Okay, is this actually going to filter anything?
Right.
I would.
They quality check it.
They quality check it. Yeah. Okay, super. But yeah, that was cool.
I was short of that because I asked that question.
Like, does this really work? No, but that was really cool.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you liked it.
All right, we're gonna wrap here in a second, but I got to ask you, What are you most looking forward to now in this role?
Man, that's hard to say. It is the sentiment that you shared, that you finally feel like you're being heard. That I'm looking forward to being able to deliver on that, right? And again, it's not just important to be heard. It's important to be heard and something happens with it. And I think that to me, I think the entire board last year, the satisfaction and the sort of the thing that got us really, and got me really, I don't want to say emotional, but got me really feeling a different way than I have before, was all the outpouring of like, this was needed. I felt amazing. And not because it was just an amazing party, because there were things like this, building filters and so on, where we were doing good and or spending a lot of time learning and so on. But being able to deliver on that, and people say, yeah, this is amazing. I mean, that's what was one of the most amazing things about starting my own company and having that become successful, was customers saying, wow, this is saving me millions of dollars or whatever. It's a different metric here in this context of WRC. It's not going to be, money directly in all scenarios, other than maybe business development, but it is that value creation, right? As an investor, as an operator, as a founder, at the end of the day, what drives me is creating value. You asked earlier, why did you take this job? If anything else that one could do. And it's the ability to create value at scale in a point in time where it's really needed.
Yeah.
It's sort of that sense of responsibility,
awesome.
Maybe giving back a little bit.
That's awesome. If people are watching this right now and they're as excited as I am about the future of WERC, what is that call to action? What can people do to get involved?
Get engaged. There's many avenues that we are opening up. We have opened up. Get on committees, either permanent committees or ad hoc committees. There's a group that comes together for planning of GWS, for all the regional summits. For pretty much everything WRC does, there's an avenue for you to get involved in and help shape. Because again, for the people, by the people, there's the important part of by the people.
We have to actually do it, right?
You have to actually roll up your sleeves and say, okay, I want to help. And that is incredibly valuable and important. I mean, recognize that WRC is not a bottomless pit with endless resources, right? It is a small but mighty organization, will be even mightier, hopefully, that is trying to do a lot for a lot of different constituents. And it has to, for its sustainability, it has to make it economically feasible for it to get done what needs done.
Yeah.
And an important part of that is, one, obviously having you attend GWS. There's a lot of, we have this concept of lounge lizards.
You got to register.
Where you can show up at the conference and just do coffee chats and meetings without actually registering and paying your dues to be there, and write off of others' coattails that are sponsoring and paying to be there, unless you were invited to be there. And sort of getting the value. I mean, that's sort of a little unfair to everybody in the industry, right? And so do your part, whether it's by contributing your time, your talents, or your financial support, because that's how amazing things will get done. And
yeah, you got to register, you got to sponsor. I mean, that's how this whole thing works, right?
Correct.
If we stop doing that, the whole thing falls apart, and
correct.
Then we're just doing webinars all the time, which is kind of okay, but not really okay.
No.
This is amazing, Anupam. Thank you so much for giving me the honor of being able to interview you. Really excited for what the future holds. I think you're going to do a phenomenal job. Love the fact you're listening and asking for people to kind of weigh in here. I think you're going to get a lot of folks doing that. Good luck with it all. But I know your heart's in the right place, and you're super smart. So it's going to make it all work. And I can't wait to see you in DC. Although I'm holding out. Maybe we can get to Asia or something. I don't know. Who knows?
Okay,
yeah. Maybe I get to Asia. I've never been to Asia before.
Yeah, you should totally do it. I thought you were going down the entertainer route again. I was like, dude,
No, we're not
Please,
getting
let's
Beyonce.
drop it.
Nobody wants Beyonce.
No, that's okay. All right. Of course I want Beyonce.
No,
Let's not
we
say
know
that
you
about
don't like
Beyonce.
Beyonce. We know you don't like Beyonce.
Oh, come on. All right. No, listen, I truly appreciate it. Actually, let me throw that back at you. The reason we're sitting down and having this conversation is not because of anything, but you caring so much and having made it so known to WERC that you wanted to be the first to interview the new CEO. Anyone could, but you did. You were the one that reached in and said, hey, I want to do this. Can I please do this? Can we do this?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here. I mean, you were talking about what's the call to action. Well, the call to action is you have a talent, you have something that you feel passionately about, and you raised your hand and said, listen, I really want to do this.
Yeah.
You're not getting paid for this.
No.
WERC is not contributing
Wait, what?
with a cent on this. I know, is that news to you? But we appreciate it and truly value it.
You get out what you put in, right? And you got to raise your hand, and that's the only way you ever get an opportunity, And so I've been raising my hand for a long time. It's just cool to finally get the opportunity. So, hey, raise your hand. Look for those opportunities. Let people know that you're interested. Reach out to ERC, WERC.
WERC.
Got to be careful. WERC. Make sure you register for all the conferences. Make sure you sponsor and lend your support. Show up in person. That's the only way to do it. Anupam, thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's real pleasure.
Take
care, everybody.
Yeah.
See you at the next WERC.